Hey everyone, Daniel Marchana here, back here for XDA TV, and I am back for the second part of our Android Q teardown. Now there are a lot of cool things that Mishal has found digging through the system image that we have, so we'll have to go through them one at a time. Let's get started. The first thing we wanted to touch on was an update to the permissions updates we spoke about briefly in the last video. Now, if you haven't seen that video, be sure to go check it out and then go ahead and come right back. So, in addition to the camera location update and the sensors access and the permissions view revamp, we have found a few other things in tow with Android Q. Now, I mentioned it briefly in the first video, but the first is a new sensors off option. Now, we don't know if this is going to make it to the final version of Q, but basically what it does is disconnect everything on your device. Now, some other sites have mentioned why would you want this over maybe airplane mode? And the answer, we can tell you. Sensors off disconnects everything. In addition to airplane mode, you also lose your cameras and the microphones. This seems to be some sort of an option for ultra-controlled environments, but it may or may not make it to the final release. Either way, it's a pretty cool addition Google added. In addition to this, we have a new permission labeled Read Clipboard in Background. This would allow you to limit what sorts of applications can access the clipboard in the background when it's not the foreground application or has a foreground service running. System-level applications would be the only ones to have this level of access, and is pretty cool considering it's fairly wide open right now. Background location access looks to be making a return in Android Q, and that makes sense considering the permission we saw in the last video. But this allows an application to gather location without having to be a running service in the foreground. While largely this is something we don't want our applications to do, there are valid reasons such as mapping your own location using a background service, and having this level of flexibility is always welcome for some really cool applications. Now, in addition to those, we mentioned there is a new physical activity recognition permission, and that could mean that Google might be decoupling that from Play services, or that it could be coupled to the system, so you don't have to integrate into Google Play services or Google Fit for that information. There are also some new storage permissions coming, and in particular, they're going to gate features like reading location from your images, accessing your music, accessing your photos, or accessing video stored on the device. And finally, we have some indication that Google may allow rolling back Android application versions, but right now it's unclear as to how this is going to work, if the user can initiate it, or if it's even going to be functional as of Q. So, navigation gestures. It's everyone's favorite topic on Android right now, and it could be getting a revamp, but don't hold your breath. There's some new toggles located in settings global entries that are not visible to the user, but reference a hide home, hide back, which could be some sort of a tweak or a revamp to the gesture navigation we're seeing, but we can't really say for sure. Now, speaking of gesture navigation, I have this build of Android Q installed on my OnePlus 6T, and while it is very broken, one thing that's interesting in this is that the navigation bar is gone. This could indicate that the forced navigation gestures we saw on the Pixel could be for Pixels only, and AOSP might stick with what we already have, or get a different version of the navigation controls. It's just interesting how it's different between the 6T and the Pixel. Now, the package installer is getting a nice revamp on Android Q. It utilizes a small dialog in the middle of the screen, similar to what Android tablets have been using for a while. It also has a warning indicating you when an application targets API 22 or below, which is equal to Android 5.0, as being outdated. I expect to see this warning fairly often, but if you run a device with an OEM skin that changes the installer, it might not even show because uniformity, right? Yeah. Face Unlock is coming to Android. Yeah, we all kind of saw this coming, but there are a lot of hooks throughout the OS that tell us that Face Unlock is going to be supported officially at the system level. It goes for things like unlocking your device, making payments, unlocking applications, pretty much everything that your fingerprint can do now. Now, it's important to notice that there is indicated that it needs special hardware in order to use this for facial recognition, which means camera recognition, like on the OnePlus devices, may not be sufficient. We might see devices devices with fronts similar to that new LG G8 build that had those two mysterious sensors flanking the speaker. Now, if you haven't seen it yet, check out XDADevelopers.com for those exclusive images. So finally, we have some new details on the theming that's currently built into this version of Android Q. Now, before you get your hopes up too high, remember, we had a dark mode in a developer preview, and then it was maliciously ripped away from us before making another appearance here in Q. So in all likeliness, much of this may not make it to release, but we can hope, and who knows what the developer community here on XDA will be able to do once Q is official. So firstly, if you recall in Android Pie, there were some toggles that allowed you to toggle the notch on the device in the developer settings. Now this has an expanded feature here in Android Q, and it includes some pretty cool stuff. From what we found, there are some accent colors, blue, green, and purple, and icon shapes, as well as two fonts located in this build. Now, there's no method to enable these from the device itself. Instead, you need to toggle them through ADB. Now, it's important to note that the OnePlus 6T I have here has square icons, whereas the Pixel had the round ones. We can only hope Google continues to develop here and make this a user-facing feature. Now, it's important to note that overlays do need platform certificates, so it's unlikely we'll get custom ones anytime soon. Now, we also thought it would be nice to notice that throughout the UI, material design is getting a refresh. You can see here on the application info screen and the battery screens that the overlay goes up through the status bar, making it flow really nicely. It's a nice UI touch from Google, making things feel connected and cohesive. Now, regarding the dark mode that we spoke about in the last video, it does appear that this will affect third-party applications as long as they use the proper API and attributes in their applications to work well with this new mode. As we have seen over the past few months, Google is updating a lot of their first-party applications to support this dark mode, and Q might be the first release we have from Google with an officially supported, system-wide, user-toggleable dark mode, which is awesome. So that wraps up this part 2 video on Android Q, and it's not even everything that we found. Be sure to hit the link in the description to Mishal's article on the XDA Developers Portal for more details and more features. And follow him on Twitter as he's constantly dropping great hints and responses to your questions about things we've covered. As always, if you're not yet subscribed, please be sure to do so and hit the notification bell to get notified of every daily video we put out. We usually take weekends off. Now, hit the like button and check out our other great content if you've enjoyed this. If you want to see more of my personal content, youtube.com/DanielMarchena is the place to go, and that's linked in the description as well. My most recent video are about my positive thoughts about the LG V40, why I'm still using it, and why I'm actually loving it. So, until next time, I'm Daniel Marchena for XDA TV.